Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? Good morning. I hope you're all doing good today. So, let's see. I'm gonna be diving into a video that's titled "When Call of Duty Took Itself Seriously." Now, I don't know what number of Call of Duties we're at this point. It went up, but it's got to be at least in the hundreds or something, at least like that. But I have to say, the best era of Call of Duty, I have to say, was somewhere between the PlayStation days, the PlayStation Xbox days to 360. And after that, it kind of derailed into, I don't know, something a bit different around when Xbox One and PS4 came out and whatnot. Although probably the one good one that did come out, in my opinion, around that time was Warzone. But it seems to be making a comeback now that I've seen commercials about it and whatnot. So I'm wondering about what that's about. So I might just dive back into it and see what that entails. But anyway, guys, let's dive into this and let's see what this is all about and see how it has progressed, degressed.
Search and destroy. Let's do this. You're the last one. Complete the mission.
And this was back in 2009, man. I think Call of Duty around that time was at its peak.
Good job, team. Get ready for the next round.
I need an FRE AK-47.
Oh my god. Okay, now I get it. It's because they're trying to be like fucking Fortnite, right?
Follow the queen. Brrr.
Call of Duty was serious.
There used to be a time when Call of Duty got made fun of for becoming too Hollywood, kind of like the Michael Bay of video games. But at the same time, it was still serious and did its own thing very well. The story and theme it was trying to convey felt more grounded, or at least it felt more impactful. And then when you went into multiplayer,
well, trying to be Hollywood and whatnot, it's because Call of Duty did copy Hollywood off. And what I mean by that is that I don't know if you guys ever seen a movie called The Rock with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage. The bathroom scene where the SEALs come infiltrate from on The Rock, Alcatraz, is almost the same in that one level. The prisoner, I think, when you no, not the prisoner, the gulag, right? The gulag on the on Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, and you find Captain Price again. Excuse me. That scene in that movie is almost parallel to that level in the game, because it's in the shower room of the prison, and it's the same. The only difference is that you don't get wiped out in the game. In the game, you come out of the shower room and whatnot. So there's that part, and then there's the other part in the game where you're at the White House and you have to basically tread through what was it? Yeah, you had to tread through to the White House to get to the roof to light the flares and whatnot, to signal for the incoming airstrike to wave it off using the flares. And that is also the same parallel in the movie The Rock, where we reach at the end of the end of the movie where Nicolas Cage gets the flares also to wave off the incoming airstrike. And yeah, that's like, after the scene, he gets the syringe and sticks it in his heart, and then he's doing that and whatnot to wave off the incoming airstrike. And yeah, so like Call of Duty kind of pretty much like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 took a lot of inspiration from that movie and was like incorporated into the game. At least those two parts and whatnot that I mentioned, those two scenes that I mentioned from the movie that were like a homage to the movie and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure it also drew some inspiration. So it's not far fetched to say that that's kind of like how it went.
Okay. It felt connected. You weren't worried about seeing a few Nicki Minaj's running around, and instead, it was just two armies fighting each other in a location that made sense for the most part. Sure, none of what I will talk about will affect gameplay. Doesn't affect how well the game runs. Yeah. And it sounds like a stupid thing to gripe about, right? But there's nothing wrong with preferences. That's something we should talk about when it's the game we get to enjoy after all. Call of Duty has changed things that I think just give it a silly look and atmosphere. And this falls mostly in the multiplayer, but a little in other modes too.
And this is the recent Call of Duty that just come out, the Black Ops, right? I forgot what number we're at this point. I'm not gonna lie, on the trailer it did look interesting, but after seeing some gameplay from YouTubers that I've follow and watch, they were like, yeah, this is, I don't know, not necessarily my cup of tea anymore. Call of Duty is not,
No one disagrees when the highest priority should be set on making the game satisfying to play. But with each video game that is successful, it typically has a charm that makes the game feel more proper. If you were to boot up Modern Warfare 2, the original one, and you just sat there in the menu for a little bit, what type of mood does it put you in? For me, I'm thinking, yeah, this is Modern Warfare. You can identify it by its music, the background, and the images correlating to each mode. Then when you think back on each game, you remember it by what was conveyed. Modern Warfare was exactly what you would think. It was a modern take on war, and you got that feeling throughout every single mode you played. What I'm trying to get at is a theme, a unified theme. You shouldn't ever underestimate the power of this. A theme can help immerse you into the game. I for sure want to be immersed. Don't you? Jumping around from campaign to spec ops.
And the multiplayer was, at its peak and whatnot. This is where I think Battlefield 3 soon after came out and whatnot, and then just kind of like, took everything over. And then, then Call of Duty and Battlefield were pretty much like, butting heads and whatnot. And it was, I think a very healthy competition aspect in the marketing, or in the industry, especially for these two heavy hitters to be competing with each other and whatnot. And both had their merits and whatnot, but for individuals to say that, like, goddamn, fuck, it was on the tip of my tongue. I think I also saw a video about this sort of take and whatnot, but like, I think trying to like, compare to the two of them is a little bit somewhat disingenuous, because people will play Call of Duty for Call of Duty being Call of Duty, and people will play Battlefield for being Battlefield, because both offer different things and whatnot. Okay. And that's not to say that, like, at certain aspects, I think, one of the two, of course, have their merits and whatnot. but to like, compare them to be like, being the same or anything like that is a little bit maybe disingenuous, or it's like, not merited. Excuse me. I just woke up, guys. I have some phlegm in my throat, so if I sound funny, that's I got some phlegm. Sorry, but yeah, it's like that, that kind of take and whatnot. And what we have now today, Call of Duty and Battlefield and whatnot, is that it's different, and it's not the same, of course. But why we got to this point is beyond my scope of what I was able to follow and whatnot. But I noticed that, like, there's been a drastic change lately in, at least for Call of Duty. Battlefield is still there, and they're still trying to, like, with the new one coming up, they're trying to go back to the roots and try to bring back how it was in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. I say Battlefield 3 was probably the peak. Battlefield 4 was just as good, but it had a very rocky start. It wasn't until like later on that it got better.
To then multiplayer, it all had a similar look. The battlefield of an army against another army helped immerse you into the game. You were just another soldier, not an operator fighting other operators, especially a Nicki Minaj operator. Her being in Call of Duty kind of just lives rent-free in my head at this point. I, for one, prefer playing as soldiers that I don't know anything about, but have a cool aesthetic to them. I definitely don't mind campaign.
That, or able to just like, change the clothing and stuff and want to like change your boots, change your helmet, change your goggles, whatever.
Characters being in there either, but I think it's much better when everything just makes sense. Playing as specific armies against other armies isn't just all about their character look either.
Are you guys having coffee right now? Because I am.
It can leak into several elements, one of those being the announcers. Do you remember when each faction would have their own announcer and actually sounded like they belonged there?
Yeah.
Some would give their heart and soul into the callouts.
We've been EMP'd! Electronics are down!
One thing about that is that in Battlefield 2042 is that the voices don't match whatsoever. Okay. And what I mean by that is if you play the American team, for some reason, the sniper sounds like an Australian. If you play a Russian on the Russian team, they do sound like Russian and whatnot. But on the simultaneous, if you play like the American team, for some reason, everyone sounds either British or British or Australian, or has some type of accent that's not even an American accent. It's just weird. It's just like, I don't know what the thinking behind that was, but maybe the US, they were trying to convey that the US had inducted the UK or Australia into the empire, so to speak, or whatever.
The enemy's taking our flag! Friendly Predator missile incoming.
Yeah.
Friendly AC-130 in the air. Enemy AC-130 above.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
The battle is lost, but the war has just begun.
Tactical nuke inbound. No! They've captured our flag! Enemy has all positions! Fight back! Counter UAV up. They're blind. Enemy AC-130 above! No! They've captured our flag!
I used to love hearing the announcers from every game because they fleshed out the atmosphere of each match.
Yeah.
To help maps feel more unique, there wouldn't be just any random faction thrown in. It would be a more proper faction for the map that made sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Free for all!
Yeah.
Free for all. Free for all!
And the games would typically have several options to select from when it came to maps. You look at a game like Black Ops 1 and you have several different options that would change dependent on the map you played.
Yeah,
the soldier you specifically played as was determined by certain perks you had selected. But what do you see when you browse through all of these characters? They all make sense. They fit the theme.
Yeah.
And they look like real soldiers. You had 6 different factions with some variety when going between different environments. There also used to be different music themes when starting a match.
Search and destroy.
Yeah.
Search and destroy. Search and destroy. Search and destroy.
Op 40. Black Ops 1.
Even if you didn't think much of this while playing, you could just feel the difference when hopping between the older Call of Duty games to the newer ones. There just isn't sense of this anywhere in the...
I can say at least maybe one of the reasons for that is that what was, I don't know what the well, I think this was the game studio's incentive was that they need to put out a Call of Duty almost every year or 2 years or however long fucking time period, which is like, not enough, time for someone to like, enjoy a game and whatnot. At least maybe a 5-year period could possibly be, a good shelf life, or a runtime, or whatever the hell you want to call it. So that right there is like one key factor to consider in why the multiplayers or the newer Call of Duties these days that come out fucking suck and whatnot, is because they half-ass them or they kind of rush them out and whatnot, and they're just trying to put only so much in a freaking game and whatnot.
Multiplayer, all random operators that make the game look like one big giant ad. I understand microtransactions are a thing, and that's a huge way companies make their money, but what's stopping them from having boundaries in what they make? Instead of releasing Homelander, release some cool Ranger or anything that fits the theme of the game. Multiplayer used to mold into the theme. Now you jump into it and it's all a jumbled mess of random things. Call of Duty's about war and the events from them.
I will say that, like, even though that the Warzone was, fun to play with and whatnot, but I did start to notice, this whole fucking like menu type screen and whatnot was a little bit, how do you say? Well, like he said, the narrator, that it's like a whole giant ad, and he's not wrong, because if there's like a weapon or a skin that you just, a weapon that you just unlock after playing a couple of matches and whatnot, somewhere around here will give you like a notification and say like, oh, go over here if you want to unlock the skin for this and blah, blah, blah and whatnot.
It used to be about committing to a theme and staying true to it. If it was World War II, then you would get a darker horror take on it with something like World at War. If it was during modern times, then we would be seeing higher stakes with more advanced weaponry. Bringing back the aesthetic would help change the tone of the game and give it a true theme that it could be known for. For a mode like...
Oh, that's another thing also. Zombies has... I think, Black Ops was like peak zombies and whatnot. Then Black Ops 2 was a little bit ridiculous.
Zombies, you could easily think that would be crazy to throw into a Call of Duty game displaying the brutality of World War II. But it doesn't make sense, it isn't realistic, but it also used to stay true to itself. It was its own universe after all, and it did take itself seriously. Zombies as a mode was something different. It wasn't replacing anything and didn't derive from the experience of others. Multiplayer would still play the exact same, and so would campaign. Nothing would ever really bleed over to those modes. But you could also say that there was an invasion. Yeah,
that was one thing I would notice about Call of Duty, at least. Battlefield, that's probably a different story. But it's not too out of the realms either. Or any game in that matter, is that the campaign elements will stay, campaign elements, and multiplayer elements would stay multiplayer and whatnot. They're almost they're actually very interchangeable, and all the elements that make the campaign good stayed within the realm, just in the campaign, and same for the multiplayer or whatever mode.
in the mode of zombies. The invasion of operators that seemingly have less soul than a basic soldier or character that look like they would belong there. The campaign has started molding into zombies with all our characters being in the universe now. Nothing feels unique anymore. It all is...
Yeah, now that was one thing about Warzone that I didn't like, was that whenever a major update came out, they gave you a huge ass cutscene for introducing an operator and whatnot. And it's just like, what? This dude, like Reznov is in World War II. Why is he here or whatever? Or Soap, isn't that like before the fact for present Call of Duty, you know?
Starting to feel overwhelmingly generic.
Like are these characters time traveling or some shit like that? Well, they probably are at this point.
That's pretty much where I think Call of Duty is at. The gameplay is an entirely different beast, but when we talk about its charm with each game's theme, a lot of it has just become bland and doesn't make any sense. It may seem like something small, and it's definitely something not a lot of people...
And you know, one thing also that I also loved about Call of Duty back in the day was that a lot of YouTubers back in the day made some pretty boss content and whatnot. Like, how do you say, like traditional trolling, where it wasn't too over the top, and it's just like, you know, just trying to get reactions of people in lobbies and whatnot. And sometimes, you know, of course, there'll be people that will take it the wrong way and just, like, you know, start going through the whole proverbial swear jar and whatnot. Like the Doug voice, that was like one. Another one was like Cosdef. Oh, freaking, he was like huge as well. Doug voice and Cosdef. And a lot of these, you know, YouTubers would just like be, you know, talking within the game and whatnot, and just like making jokes and doing seemingly harmless trolling and whatnot. And, you know, that they'll get like different reactions within the lobby, and either people will, like, you know, get on the horn and be like, oh my god, you're that guy on YouTube, and you'll hear it in the video of one player while the streamer, or sorry, the YouTuber recording the video is just like, oh, I can't believe you're this guy. It's like, it's so freaking cool and whatnot. And you just see the, you know, making content and whatnot, and just like so many different types of you know, situations where, you know, of people like trolling and doing some pretty good trolling and whatnot, where it's like pretty funny. It'll have you, you know, for a good laugh and whatnot. And around that time, you know, it was definitely peak Call of Duty days and whatnot. These days, I don't see people, you know, making videos like that back in the like that back in the day anymore and whatnot.
Would care about, but it does make...
Why? I don't know. It could be either the YouTubers back then, you know, were just like, you know, doing that type of content, and, you know, years later now they're just like doing something different now because, you know, things change over the years. But also Call of Duty itself has changed over the years and whatnot. Not for the better. Not for the better though.
Make a bigger difference than lots would think. You can make fun of old...
But that's just like, you know, my 2 cents about, like, when it comes to that realm and whatnot. When multiplayer was, you know, a big thing in itself, it was like its own entity.
They're Call of Duty all you want, but it used to have themes that it stuck true to. They were serious about displaying different eras of war, and when it came to alternate modes such as zombies, they approached it as its own thing. Booting up a Call of Duty game used to come with a distinguishable look that you could quickly identify.
Black Ops was peak campaign, man, in my opinion.
That would be carried throughout in several different ways, but the part where COD can still be considered serious would have to be only the campaign at this point. The story for the most part is still serious, and basically the only mode that I think actually takes the theme of the game seriously. I still get immersed into the experience, and
I think this is a Modern Warfare remastered, or not remastered, but rebooted or whatever, right? And people have said that the Modern Warfare again. I think this is the first one. I'm not sure if it's the second one or the first one, but or hell, it could be the third one. I haven't played them, but I have heard good things about the first one at least.
it feels proper. But there is something you could pick apart from it. Everything can feel too hero focused. There is moments where you would again just be another soldier.
Right.
You could be anyone and you jump into their perspective as they fight through the events of the game. There is a balance of this. The storytelling often had you jumping from character to character to eventually lead to the ending of the game where everything would unfold. It had a certain way about it that made the story feel more grand in scale.
Yeah.
Like these events were truly more than just our main cast of characters. It made characters like Ramirez become a living legend amongst fans even though he was a silent protagonist with little backstory.
Yeah.
But it also had guts. Things like gore and torture scenes like in World at War makes the game feel more.
Of course, and also like the infamous No Russian level that had, rippled through media, the internet, everywhere, dude. People were like, very, sensitive about that and whatnot. But one of the devs or, developers for the game came on, I think on the news. I forgot what fucking news outlet, but he basically just gave like the freedom of speech card and whatnot, and he's not wrong, because as terrible as that level is, the No Russian level is that like they had, how do I say this? Okay, you know how there's like terrible games out there. Like, example, like there's actually a game out there that has to do with like with the whole Columbine thing. Automatically, that already sounds, very, very bad. But does it have a right to exist? This might be a hot take, but I think it does. But does that mean that everyone in the world is, going to jump on the horn and play that game? I don't think so. Not generally, no. Maybe a certain selective people, maybe. But that doesn't mean that I don't think any piece of media doesn't deserve to, exist. It should exist. And I think the audience can judge for itself. And whether or not if it's good or not, because I genuinely think that people know what's good and what's not good.
Serious. A mission like No Russian left impacts on the players and went as far as being controversial in the media. Things like that set the dangers in a story and makes a villain someone to not take lightly. Plot armor on characters also plays things too safely and doesn't present any danger to our cast if we always know they're going to end up surviving it. I think that, in a way, has creeped into the game as well. But when Call of Duty took itself seriously, it was able to captivate gamers across all modes they would play. It stuck to its guns and made games that were fondly remembered by the charm it provided in each of its modes.
And it's not just Call of Duty, it's like the whole industry in itself and whatnot. Not a lot of companies or games these days are willing to take risk and stick to their guns. They want to make it modern. They want to make it user friendly. They want to make it for everyone and whatnot. I've seen this already happen to Halo. We're at Halo Infinite right now, and I think this is actually before even Infinite. This is Halo 5 Guardians, where the M rating had finally dropped and it was rated T for teen now. And now, a lot has changed with Halo, because Halo 1 through 3 were peak. Okay, all of them had, you know, the elements of what made Halo great. It wasn't until like maybe 4 where it was still good, but now we have started 343 has started to diverge from what made, you know, Bungie, Halo's Bungie, sorry, good. And it was just like, you know, it was starting to be 343. And now after 3 games, we're here at Infinite, and a lot has changed. Halo is not as bloody as it used to be. It's not as, let me see. Fuck. Well, yeah, it's not as bloody, and it's not as, like, you know, we don't have like another Johnson. Also, we don't have necessarily impeccable characters other than, like, you know, Chief, but we don't have, like, you know, other characters like Johnson or Captain Keyes or Miranda Keyes. They're just footnotes at this point. A lot has changed and whatnot. You now in Infinite and today's Halo is that now you aim with the left trigger and then shoot, just like a regular Call of Duty game. Where Halo, it was just like a straight up, you know, Doom, a bit Doom style first person shooter where you just have the gun and you just reload and you just shoot and whatnot. It might have been welcomed in Halo, that feature in Halo 5 and whatnot, but they changed it again and whatnot, you know. So like there's a lot of things that have changed for Halo, which can be also said for Call of Duty and whatnot, just different aspects and whatnot for those two franchises. For Call of Duty is trying to be like Fortnite at this point, because, you know, they're introducing Nicki Minaj, Homelander, except who, I don't know whoever the fuck they're putting as operators now, which is just like fucking weird. I was like, why are you putting these characters in this game? That's more of like a Fortnite thing. And I'll never play Fortnite because I just don't understand the appeal of it, and I think it just looks I mean, I've tried it when it first came out, but like, no. But I'll never play it again. You'll never see me play that fucking game again. It's not my cup of tea. If it's yours, freaking cool. I'm just not gonna play. It's just not mine. It's too cartoony for me in a way. I can see the appeal of it, but just like, nah. I'm good. There are other games, like other battle royales that are, you know, a bit different and a little bit more in my realm. But, you know, this is kind of like where we're at this point. Sometimes change isn't always good. If it's not broken, then why change it? If you're going to change something, it should be for the betterment of the game, but not for, you know, the overall gameplay or theme, like the narrator has said.
Although this may not be a big concern, it's not something to forget, and I think it's fair to be vocal about. If it wasn't for an overlapping theme, I think older Call of Duty games would have had a hard time going down as being iconic.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill is in talks.
My bad. Well, yeah, there you have it, guys.
Good job, team. Get ready for the next.
Sorry. Yeah, that's not far-fetched out of the realm of on the topic, you know. And it's like I said, we've already seen this happen to many games now. Not just Halo, Call of Duty, even Gears of War is another one. And Gears of War 1 through 3 was, you know, the best of for a different franchise to offer. You know, fucking game was so goddamn good. Is like, it's now becoming a footnote, or well, maybe not rather, but I think should be revisited and played again and whatnot. I still find myself playing these older games. I'm not gonna lie. Although I wish it had a bit of a, you know, upgrade in graphics for it to be like, you know, today's modern, a bit modern standard. Like for Modern Warfare 2, it should have like an HDR enhancement and frames as well. You know, 60 frames or whatever. Because if you were to get Modern Warfare 2 and pop it in, it's a little bit grainy, you know. It'd be nice if it had a bit of a upgrade, an update to enhance the graphics just a little bit, so it looks clear and not grainy. Because it really does. It does look that way. All right. Well, anyway, guys, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. Please leave a like and subscribe. I'll leave the original video in the description, so let me go ahead and copy that, and I'll leave that in the description. Definitely go give Sir Wheezy a like and watch the original video. It was definitely a good video. Shout out to him. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it. Like I said, I'll catch you on the next one.